I have been personally dreading. I have been personally dreading this moment. um, the last video took place on October 9th, 2022. The next video that you're going to see takes place in October 15th, 2022. 6 days. Over the course of those 6 days, my wife, I went to work, and her grandmother tried to get her to eat. We had her grandmother staying with us to help with the nutrition stuff that we've been talking about. They kind of poke at her and get her to eat. And her grandmother messaged me, and I'll never forget it. I asked her how she was doing, and her grandmother just basically said, I think she's okay, but she's a little delirious. Or she's refusing to eat or something. I forgot what it was. And or maybe it was she was having trouble waking her up. I don't remember. So I left work. I came immediately home and walked in, and we started ordering food. We started, whatever we can do to get her to eat. But Brittany was she wasn't eating. I couldn't get her to like really respond very well. And she had a moment where I made a religious comment. I don't even remember what it was. But I made a comment that had to do with faith or whatever, and she scoffed at it. And everyone here in this, if you guys been watching for a while, my wife is very, very faithful. And she used that moment to not only scoff at my comment of faith, but also to kind of poke at me in a very derogatory sense. And my face just dropped. I realized, like, my wife is not here right now. This is like, she's either delirious or something's going on. So I walked to her grandmother and said, we're going to the hospital. Something's wrong. I don't know what it is, but we need to end this. We need to take care of this and nip this in the bud, fix it, whatever it is. And Brittany reluctantly agreed. She's very resistant to doing anything hospital-wise, but she agreed. And once we got to the hospital, we got her into a hospital bed. And they said that her sugar was really low, and they pumped her full of fluids and sugar, and she was a little responsive right there in the very beginning, the first day. After the first day, she became mostly non-responsive. I'm not going to say she was entirely non-responsive. She would mutter here or there, but she wouldn't really talk, wouldn't really say anything. And I was praying. I was reading Psalms to her. I was doing everything I could to keep myself sane. And eventually, they did a little minor cognitive test on her, and they asked her name. She said it. They asked her who the president was, and she didn't respond. They were like, "What year is it?" And she said, 2020. And they were like, "Try again." It was currently 2022. They were like, "Try again. What year is it, hun?" And she said, And they were like, try again, hon. And she said, 2020, very emphatically. And then they corrected her and said it was 2022. And then she began repeating the word 2022 3 or 4 times. And they asked her another question. I forgot what it was. And she was just 2022. She was just stuck on 2022. And I broke. My wife is so sharp. So exact with everything. To see her mind getting little things confused. Oh man. It threw me for a loop. And then they did some more tests on her. I think they did an x-ray or something. Yeah. All of this hospital stay took about 4 days. In the middle of it, her father showed up to the hospital. And the first time meeting the man, he was standing outside of our hospital room. I hadn't let anybody up to see her because I knew that she was just in a really bad state, and there was some reason why they were being really selective with who could come up there, letting only like 4 people in at a time or something. So I had a few visitors, a few people who came in, but mostly, the thing that stood out was her father showed up. The first time meeting the man, and up until this point, I was scared to let him in the room. I didn't want him to see her, not because I was trying to be mean or anything like that, but I knew Brittany was scared of the man. Even though we had started talking about responding to him and maybe trying to get more involved in his life and get him involved in her life, we just ran out of time. We just never happened. So I wanted him to be near, and I wasn't going to tell the man no, but I was scared to have him in her presence and then him say something to her, and then she would wake up and see her father there. And I was scared that it would hurt her. I was scared that it would freak her out in her diminished cognitive ability. I thought that it would be bad. But I did let him eventually come in and, talk to her. And nothing bad happened. She never responded. And it was at this time that I started to, a few more things happened. And I will, instead of me telling you what happened, I contacted her friend group. She had a Marco Polo. If you've never been on the app, it's basically a FaceTime kind of app that saves all the messages. And groups of people can talk, and you'll just get a queue of messages, and you just watch them, and you can communicate with your friends. And Brittany hadn't spoken to them in a long time, but I knew they cared. So I opened up the Marco Polo app, and I sent a message to them telling them everything that happened. One thing that I don't mention that I think is very important. During that message, you'll hear me mention that we put in a feeding tube to try to get her some nutrients, and you'll hear the saga of what happened there. When they put in the feeding tube, she woke up. Like, of all the times for her to respond and be, to actually be responsive, she woke up when they were putting in the feeding tube. And after they got it in, and the nurse left, my wife looked to me and said, "Am I gonna die?" I told her no. I told her no. I told her no. And, she held on to it. It was, I've never seen her that weak. I never saw her like that. And, oh God. It was terrible. And then shortly after they took out the feeding tube is when I made the Marco Polo call to her friends. And that Marco Polo call is the next video that you're going to see in this video. So, obviously, we've got 3 more months after this date. So, she doesn't die. She literally gets sent home to die by the hospital and telling us that, yeah, her organs are failing. She's not absorbing food. And we opted to bring her home and just surround her with friends and family and dogs. And she woke up, and you'll get to hear all about that. But this moment, this crazy moment when we were in that hospital and I saw my wife dying. It started the countdown. We didn't know it, but it started the clock. We'd get exactly 3 months from the date that video went live, or that video, the Marco Polo. We'd get literally 90 days before she passed. So I'll let Darren from that time tell it. I'll let the story be the story. But yeah.
Hey guys, I'm sure some of you remember me. I wanted to give you guys an update about Brittany. We are currently at a hospital. At a certain point, her body began to stop processing food. So over time, her size got smaller and smaller. Up until about 5 days ago, I was trying to get her to eat more, trying to get her to push. And she started to get really delirious. So I brought her in to the hospital, and she was malnourished, of course, just fighting to get her to be able to eat. But we went into, trying to bring her back, trying to solve the issues as they were coming down, right? She had some kidney function issues. She had all kinds of little things pop up here and there, but really what happened was her stomach just stopped being able to digest food, and we uncovered that whenever we did the feeding tube and gave her a bunch of nutrients, and they start slow, and she wasn't able to digest the food even on some of its lower settings. I think the entire bottle should be gone in 8 hours, and they have 10% speed, 20% speed, 30% speed, and they crank you up over time. So I started her on 10, and then they moved up to 20, and then she had a bunch of food still in her stomach after a certain point, so they pulled back and they let her digest, and they started her over at 10, and then they checked it, and her she had the exact same amount in her stomach after 6 hours, or 4 hours, 6 hours. It's all a blur. So at that point, we moved on to trying to decide what the next best step was. We could have did IV nutrients, but those don't have the things that are necessary, right? They're more useful for people who got an injury to their stomach or surgery on their stomach, and they need to sustain you long enough for your body to naturally heal and start being able to digest food again. And so the problem with Brittany was that her stomach, she's so frail, there's no nutrients to draw from. So the nutrients that her stomach would need to repair, if it could fix itself, are not necessary, or are not there, are not going to be there to be able to help repair. So I opted to go home. She's unhooked from everything, got the feeding tube out. That was a terrible experience, but when she got that out, she's been resting so peacefully, even before they put the meds in, even before they started looking at all the different medications that we should stop taking, or things that we could do for pain and whatnot. The nurses said that she's one of the most comfortable looking and content looking persons that they've ever seen. So I'm thankful for that. She is wonderful, amazing. We're currently at the hospital. We are going home tonight. We're waiting on the EMT, or no, not EMT. We're waiting on ambulance because they do transport, right? I just wanted to be comfortable when we get her home, and she's surrounded by family and friends right now. We've got everybody was up here today, immediate family and close friends or nearby friends. But I am when we get home. There's a time frame. The nurses have judged just kind of like what the time would look like, and I asked them because I'm just trying to stay pragmatic and stay on top of things. But they say anywhere between 3 days to 2 weeks. So when we get her home, I'm kind of email blasting and messaging every single person that she knows, and texting, calling, Marco Poloing on her phone. Anybody who wants to see her, my home is open for everyone and anyone. I want her to, anybody who wants to see her is available to do so. So, if you are interested, I'm trying to think of the best way to do this. If you are interested in coming to my home for it at some point to see her, I know that a lot of you are far all over the place, and I'm not expecting it. Let me just put that in perspective. I know you guys are everywhere, and I know that this would be incredibly difficult and insane. But if you do feel that you want to, the offer is there. Yeah. I don't know how many of you still actively use this thing, but I know in the beginning of all this, she was kind of on it, and it got overwhelming for her, and she couldn't keep up with it. But she loved you guys. And she stressed about not being able to talk to you because she stressed about the number of Marco Polos that she would have had to go through and the amount of energy she had to go through them all. But she also stressed about the fact that she never could get herself to go through them. But I just want you guys to know that she loved you, she thought about you, and So, thank you guys. I know it's been hit or miss, but you guys really did support us, support her, and that's supporting us. So thank you.